Margaret Thatcher and Angela Merkel. Powerful women in politics. Today, we're going to look at two powerful women who made a huge difference in world politics. Margaret Thatcher and Angela Merkel are two such women who have made their presence felt. Margaret Thatcher was the Prime Minister of the UK from 1979 to 1990, the first woman in this role. She believed in free market policy and less government control. Thatcher's leadership was marked by her strong will and willingness to make difficult decisions. She was known for her firm stand against communism. Angela Merkel, Germany's chancellor from 2005 to 2021, was also the first woman in this role. Merkel is known for her practical leadership style and her ability to work well with others. She has been a strong supporter of the EU and has played a key role in shaping its policies. Merkel is also famous for managing the refugee crisis and fighting climate change. To their supporters, Margaret Thatcher and Angela Merkel rank among the top politicians of all time.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to English for You. I'm Mike.
I'm Nikki.
And today we are beginning a two-day look at some powerful women in politics. That's right. These are powerful women who were formerly in politics. They're both retired now, but they certainly were, we could say, groundbreakers and trailblazers for some of the women in politics we have around today. I mean, It used to be a strange thing, right? That a country would have a female leader.
Yeah.
America still is not quite there, although, of course, Kamala Harris is the nominee for the Democrat Party. So who knows? They might have a female president very, very soon. Of course, Hillary Clinton got close. And here in Taiwan, we had
one. We had Tsai Ing-wen.
That's
exactly.
right. And before that, of course, we had Annette Lu Shoulian, right? She was the vice president for about 8 years, if I remember correctly. But let's go back even further to start with Margaret Thatcher. She was, of course, the Prime Minister of Britain in the 1980s. So we're going to be looking at her and Angela Merkel, who more recently was the president of Germany. Is that the name of the...
No, it's a prime minister.
Is it a prime minister in Germany? I always get confused. Some countries have different systems. Okay, so let's have a look at both Margaret Thatcher and Angela Merkel, two very interesting women, very interesting careers, and as it says there in our title, definitely powerful women in politics. All right, so let's get into our article. It says, today we're going to look at two powerful women who made a huge difference in world politics. Okay, so if you know anything about Margaret Thatcher, Angela Merkel, Tsai Ing-wen, Kamala Harris, Hillary Clinton, you know that these ladies are not famous in the world of sports. They're not famous in the world of entertainment. They're not really famous in the world of business. They're famous in the world of politics. And so when we talk about politics, we're talking about the skill, the art, the science, you might say, of running a government and making laws. If you want to be elected, if you want to be a local politician, that's what we would call a person in politics, maybe a mayor, the leader of a city government, or maybe even rise to be a president, a prime minister, or a chancellor, the leader of a whole country's government. Well, that job would be in politics. So politics, yes, is about running the country, making the laws, making sure people are safe, making sure the country is safe, and making a lot of big decisions that will affect thousands or even millions of people's lives. For example, we could say Monica is interested in a career in politics. One day she might even be president. Wouldn't that be cool?
今天我们要来介绍两位很重要的政治家，分别是柴契尔和梅克尔。那 politics 这个名词指的是政治，那通常指的是对社会群体的统治，各种团体结合起来做和国家相关的政策。那另外 politician 这个字呢，指的是政客、政治家 ，it's a member of a government。那另外我们还看到这个片语 make a difference to have an important influence on something or somebody， 也就是说对某人某事带来改变或者是有所影响。
Okay, so let's get into it. Margaret Thatcher and Angela Merkel are two such women who have made their presence felt. They certainly have. They're famous people and they've had a great effect on their countries, right? They've changed their country's history in many different ways. So yes, we can definitely say they've made their presence felt. Their presence is just basically the state of being somewhere, all right? If you are in a place, then your presence is in that place. It might be something people talk about. Oh, look who's there. I'm talking about the presence of someone quite famous or quite interesting. But it basically means that a person or a living thing is there. I wouldn't really say I sense the presence of a television in this room or something like that. Not really, because it usually has to be alive in some way. I would even kind of limit it to living animals. I wouldn't really say, I sense the presence of a Christmas tree in this living room or something. I might say, though, I sense the presence of an animal. You can kind of hear it. Maybe you look at it, you see it a little bit, but you just know that it is there with you. Its presence is in that place at that time. Here's one you might point out, as I said, if someone interesting is around. For example, we are honored to be in the presence of one of the greatest tennis players in history, ladies and gentlemen, Serena Williams.
Presence 这个名词指的是存在。Someone's presence is the fact that someone is in the place. 那它的形容词 present 指的是 in a particular place, 在场的、出席的。那 the opposite of presence would be absence, 缺席。那另外我们还看到 make somebody's presence felt, 一个人的存在被感觉到，也就是说注目，使某一个人令人注目，或者是对某一个人刮目相看。
All right, so Margaret Thatcher and Angela Merkel. One thing about that, Angela would be the English pronunciation of that name for Ms. Merkel. We're going to go with Angela because I believe that's closer to the German pronunciation. You might hear people say Angela Merkel. I think more and more as people got to know her more, they switched over to the German, although if it's not exactly perfect for German pronunciation, we apologize. But let's look at the first lady there, Margaret Thatcher. She was a politician long before Angela Merkel came on the scene, so let's start with her. It says Margaret Thatcher was the Prime Minister of the UK from 1979 to 1990, the first woman in this role. She was indeed. That was one of the first Western countries, in fact, to have a female leader. I think Israel, of course, had Golda Meir way back in the old days, in the 50s or 60s or something like that. But for a Western country, a European country, or North America, Margaret Thatcher was one of the first. She's the prime minister. That's what they call the leader of the government in Britain. It's a little bit of a different system here in Taiwan. It's a president. But of course, in the UK and Britain, they have a king. So the leader of that country is actually the king or the queen. The prime minister just leads the king or queen's government. That's why they are the first, or prime minister. And yeah, it was about a 10-year period, 79 to 1990. The first woman to have that job. Of course, since then, they've had Theresa May, who was also the prime minister not too long ago. But Margaret Thatcher, it says she believed in free market policy and less government control. She was very responsible for selling off a lot of the things the government owned, like the airlines or railways or power stations, gave it over to business. She was a big believer that if you let businesses just do what they want, the whole country will be better off.
Prime Minister 指的是首相或者是总理。A Prime Minister is the head of a government, not the state. 那再来，我们今天来看一下今天的 Language in Focus. Believe in something, 相信某个东西的存在，基于对某件事情或者是某个人的信念。但这件事情啊，不一定是有根据或者是有证据支持的。So for example, she's very superstitious. She believes in ghosts and supernatural things. 那再来，如果我们看到 believe 这个动词，它指的是相信。那后面可以直接加受词 somebody 或者是 something， 也可以使用 that 引导的名词子句，引出相信的事物。I believe you. I think you're telling the truth. I believe that you're not lying. 那跟 I believe in you 加了一个 in， 两个意思不一样。这边的意思就是说 I have faith in you. I think that you can pull this off.
Very, very true. All right, back to our article. Thatcher's leadership was marked by her strong will and willingness to make difficult decisions. Yes, okay. Her leadership, this is the position or the function of being a leader. If you are a boss, you are in a leadership position. You are a leader, so you should show leadership. You should be able to manage, run, control, and keep your workers doing what they should do, and hopefully keep your workers happy. So leading the country, her time as prime minister was marked by her strong will and willingness to make difficult decisions. We have this example sentence for leadership. Amy shows greater leadership abilities. I think we should make her the assistant manager. Okay, so she's a good leader. She should be a good boss. Back to Margaret Thatcher. It says she was known for her firm stand against communism. Yeah, this is back in the time period that we call the Cold War, when the West, Europe, and America were sort of against the Soviet Union, which was what we called Russia at that time. And I believe it was the Russians who called her the Iron Lady. They kind of gave her an interesting nickname because she was so strong. We're talking about her strong will and her willingness to make difficult decisions. She also took Britain into a little war there in 1982, which kind of came out of nowhere. And luckily for her and the country, the Britain won the war. But that also was a time when she had to show leadership and take some very difficult decisions.
那 leadership 这个名词指的是领导或者是领导地位。Leader 是领导人，那加上一个 suffix ship。A state or a condition of something 状态，那加在一起呢，就会变成 leadership 领导地位。那如果我们要说是在某个人的领导之下，我们可以说 under somebody's leadership。那这边课文也就是说，柴契尔的领导方式是很坚定，而且不害怕做困难的决定。那同时，他也因为对抗共产主义而出名。Communism 指的是共产主义 a political system. They believe in a society without social classes, and everything they have and owned are controlled by their government. 那再来我们也可以看到资本主义的话，我们可以说是 capitalism.
All right, now we've had a quick look at Margaret Thatcher's career. Let's turn our attention to Angela Merkel. It says Angela Merkel's Germany's chancellor from 2005 to 2021 was also the first woman in this role. So just as Margaret Thatcher was the first female leader of her country's government, of course not the queen, but a politician, Angela Merkel similarly was the first leader of Germany. Notice there that we don't have a president or a prime minister. It's a chancellor in Germany. I think they have a federal system. So often, you know, the position, the job, the responsibilities are very similar. But depending on the title, it gives you a clue as to how their politics is organized, their constitution and things like that. But really, we just think of them as the leaders of their countries. And yes, Angela Merkel was the first to do that job in Germany. Merkel is known for her practical leadership style and her ability to work well with others. Yeah, absolutely. She was not really a politician her whole life. I believe she was an engineer, a chemist or something. And so she had a very practical leadership style. She wasn't the one that you went to for, you know, wonderful speeches that would fill your heart with love for the country or anything like that. No, if you're practical, you're a little bit better at just dealing with problems as they are in the real world. You're not kind of imagining things and dreaming things and using your personal charm to, you know, make people have wonderful dreams for their country. No, you're dealing with the day-to-day, the basic stuff, the ABCs, as we would say. So that's very useful, but it might not inspire people to great feelings. But it will keep the country on the right track and keep, you know, as we say sometimes in English, it'll keep the lights on and the trains running. So it'll just kind of keep the system rolling along in a way that works for most people most of the time. It's very practical. Here's an example sentence. We could say, I was shocked when my boss dismissed me, but tried to be practical and plan my next step.
那梅克尔是德国的总理 ，Chancellor 指的是德国或者是奥地利等国的总理。那这边课文说他的领导方式呢，则是偏向比较务实以及重视和他人的合作。Practical 这个形容词指的是务实的。If we say that somebody is a practical person, it means that this person is making decisions based on what's possible. 那相反的，如果是不实际的、不务实的，我们可以用这个字 impractical.
All right, so back to Angela Merkel. She has been a strong supporter of the EU and has played a key role in shaping its policies. Yeah, Germany and France have both been pretty strong supporters of the European Union. That's the EU. That's the sort of across Europe government that meets in Brussels, in Belgium. She was a strong supporter of the EU. And of course, we can compare that to someone like Boris Johnson, who was the Prime Minister of Britain, who got Britain out, or helped to get Britain out of the EU. So not a strong supporter there from the British over the last few years. Germany and France, though, with Macron taking the job now as being the big supporters of the EU. They believe in the EU. They believe in this European government. They think Europe should make big decisions together instead of doing it, one country against each other. And so Angela Merkel played an important role in shaping its policies and sort of guiding the EU, thinking of what it can do now and what it should try to do in the future. And here's a good example. Merkel is also famous for managing the refugee crisis and fighting climate change. Yeah, of course. Around the time of the war in Syria, this would be 6 or 7 years ago, probably now. Thousands of people were trying to, leave places like Syria or Iraq, places where there was war and no jobs and no safety. And these were refugees, people escaping a dangerous place to try to find a safer, more peaceful life in another part of the world. I think Germany took in huge numbers of people were coming from, the dangerous parts of the world into Europe looking for a safe new place to call home. And a lot of people are like, oh, we can't take all these people. So many are arriving at such a short time. But Angela Merkel kind of said, no, we have to. We can't just close Europe off and tell these people too bad. These people need help and we should give them help. So this was a crisis. A crisis is a critical, dangerous situation. Bad things can happen in a crisis. Normal things have sort of been paused because we're sort of in emergency mode right now. We're having terrible trouble in a very quick period of time, right? So a crisis will probably happen quite quickly, not develop over, thousands or, many days or months or years. It will probably happen quite quickly. Here's one example. Neil is having a personal crisis. I should call him to see if he's okay.
那同时呢，梅克尔也是欧盟很重要的支持者。If you say we play a role in something， 在某件事情上面扮演某个角色，或者是起上某个作用。那不仅是这样，他对难民的问题以及气候变迁等议题都有很实际的帮助。Refugee 这个名词指的是难民 ，a person that escaped from their country because of a war or political reasons。那 crisis 这个名词指的是危机或者是危急关头 ，it's an emergency。那所以我们常常会听到 financial crisis， 你有一些经济上的危机 ；identity crisis， you feel uncertain of your purpose。
To their supporters, it says, Margaret Thatcher and Angela Merkel rank among the top politicians of all time. So this would be for people who like them, maybe people who voted for them, people who agree with their political positions. So for their supporters, Margaret Thatcher and Angela Merkel rank among the top politicians of all time. They would, pick them as the best prime minister or the best chancellor the country's had or the country's had in the last 100 years. And, sometimes historians might agree, but of course other people will disagree because they don't like their decisions. But basically, if you rank something, you're kind of grading it or you're placing it in a list of the best down to the worst or the not so good. For example, the 3 judges are being asked to rank each performer from best to worst.
那最后课文说到，对于柴契尔和梅克尔的支持者来说，他们两个绝对是政治家排行榜上的前几名。Rank 这个动词指的是排名或是具有某个地位，那它当名词的时候指的是职位或者是级别。那另外这个片语 of all time 指的是有史以来。那如果不想错过更多精彩的 English for You 内容，那就赶快订阅我们的 YouTube 频道和追踪我们的 Facebook 吧。
All right, we have our chat question to go before we wrap things up. Here's a good question. What challenges do you think Margaret Thatcher and Angela Merkel faced as female leaders?
I would say they have to earn people's trust.
Definitely. I would sum it up with one word: sexism. They were being judged in ways that men weren't. I remember Margaret Thatcher had to change her hairstyle. She had to change the way she spoke. She used to talk with a higher voice, and then she learned to talk with a lower voice. And you don't really you never heard anyone really say that, oh, that guy, I don't like his suits. His suits are ugly. But with a female politician, people will criticize their hair, their clothes, their jewelry, the way they talk. And I'm sorry, but that's just sexism.
Yeah.
When you're judging women on things that you would never judge a man on, that is just showing sexism. So that's one of the many things that they had to face as female leaders. It's better now, but it still is a problem.
Exactly.
All right, guys, that's all the time we have today, but we're going to be back with Margaret Thatcher and Angela Merkel tomorrow and find out a lot more interesting information about their respective careers. Please come back and join us for that. Vocabulary Review.
Politics. Marvin is very interested in politics. He reads a lot of news about the government. Presents. Joseph feels nervous at social events, so he often brings his dog. The dog's presence helps him feel comfortable. Leadership. The team's success was mainly because of the coach's leadership on and off the field. Practical. Sophia isn't a very practical person. She has these ideas to make money that would never work in real life. Crisis. World leaders met to discuss solutions to the current climate crisis affecting the planet. Rank. Because Stacy is very smart and works hard, she ranks first in her class.
智慧小补帖
Prime Minister. Communism. Chancellor. Refugee.